Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third session of this weekend of the 26th Lay Clergy Institute. For those of you who are visiting, or for those of you who are members and may need a little refresher course, the Lay Clergy Institute is a part of this church which has been separately funded by the Lanyon Foundation. And its purpose has been, for the last 30 years, to bring nationally known speakers into the community for the purpose of discussion and information on important issues of the day. This weekend we are very pleased to have had with us and to have with us this morning Mr. Brian McNaught. The Lay Clergy Institute has been an institute which has been focused on social activism in the community. In your bulletins you'll find a history of the Lay Clergy Institute and the people who have spoken here over the past 30 years. And I'd just like to note, without going into detail, that without lay clergy and the appearance of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in the 80s, Boulder County probably would not have a hospice program. And without the appearance of Millard Fuller, Boulder County would probably not have a Habitat for Humanity program. So you can be proud of the work that the Lay Clergy Institute has done over the years. Those who have attended the weekend proceedings, I think, will agree that we have had a memorable weekend. It's been a weekend of education, a weekend of insight, and a weekend of introspection. It's been a weekend of joy and a weekend of tears. We had 91 people at the workshop yesterday who sat on hard metal chairs from 9 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, dedicating themselves to the issue. We had people all the way from Parker, Colorado, who came back this morning to Estes Park. And there may have been people beyond that of whom I don't know. But we were very pleased that they came as far as they did to attend the session yesterday. For those people who did not attend yesterday or yesterday evening, I think you can be proud of the face that this church was able to present to the community. We presented an image of openness and an image of compassion. I'd just like to say a couple of quick thanks to the members of the Lay Clergy Committee. I'm not going to take the time to name them individually. And a special thanks to Bill and Marilyn Decker. Bill Decker and Marilyn stayed here from 7 o'clock until 11 o'clock Friday night, setting up the fellowship hall for video and speakers. Spent all day yesterday and gave up their symphony tickets last night so they could videotape Brian's presentation last night. So that wasn't in Marilyn's job description when she hired on, and we do certainly appreciate the time and dedication they gave to us. There is a photo exhibit in Library Lounge and in the Fireside Hall, and it will be taken down after today. So it's called Love Makes a Family, and I think it's a very interesting exhibit consistent with the weekend program. I'd invite you to spend some time looking at that because it'll be moving to Lafayette, I believe, tomorrow. Next Sunday at 11 o'clock, there will be a Sundays at 11 session, which will be focusing on a debriefing for members of our congregation concerning the topic of this weekend. On the insert in your bulletin, is a sheet of paper which discusses Brian's biography, and on the back of it is an announcement concerning the Sundays at 11. And we would invite you to put down any comments you would like to and leave them at the back of the church at the end of the morning so that we would have some topics to discuss which you particularly want to address next weekend. With respect to the photo exhibit, I'd just like to say thank you to Lori and Wayne Moore, Kirk and June Thomas, Steve Simpson and Mimi Fairley for the work they did in setting that up. Did I forget anybody? I hope I didn't. And now we can move on to the event of the morning. Brian McNaught would like me, first of all, to apologize in advance for the fact that he's going to have to leave immediately after the worship service. He has a 1:30 plane from DIA, and he has to return his rental car before that. So given the time constraints, he unfortunately will have to hop in his car and get on the road. So the opportunity for conversation and fellowship will have to be bypassed this morning. There are books for sale that Brian has written in the library lounge, and you are free to peruse those and buy them if you wish. For any visitors we have in our church this morning, I would like to put you at ease. As I said last night, we have no intention for any involuntary immersions or conversions this morning. We would just ask you to sit back, relax, and absorb. We are pleased to welcome this morning Brian McNaught. Brian is the leading corporate consultant in gay sensitivity training on issues in the workplace. I'll invite you to read his biography in greater detail in the bulletin because we want to leave him time to speak this morning. He is a wonderful public speaker for those of you who have heard him, and those of you who haven't, you will not be disappointed for coming. Brian McNaught.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Before I begin with my comments, I thought we should acknowledge the work of the Lay Clergy Committee in creating an incredible program in your name, in the name of this church, that drew people here with the promise that this church stands for inclusion. And they put a lot of work into this program. And Neil is right, this room and your meeting room were filled yesterday with tears of joy and sadness and hope and smiles and some laughter, and it happened in a church, which maybe we all think it should be happening in, but for most gay, lesbian, and bisexual people who have made a journey, church is perhaps the last place they thought they might feel welcome and safe enough to cry or to laugh. So would you join me in giving a big hand to the committee that worked so hard? Thank you. I know you're not all in the same place on this issue. If you were, I wouldn't need to be here. And you wouldn't be struggling with this issue yourself as to whether or not this congregation is going to declare itself as open and affirming. And for those of you who are not members of the United Church of Christ, that's a designation saying that our congregation wants to say publicly, loudly, firmly, and with great conviction that this is a safe space for gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered people and those who care about them. And I know that within the congregation it is normal to expect that there's all kinds of questions about why do we need to do this? Anyone should know that they're welcome here. Or if we do this, is it somehow going to change the personality of our congregation, our family? And those are legitimate questions. They come from a journey of not really understanding too much about the topic. And I always say I don't doubt that people don't understand too much about this topic. You didn't get much education on it. And in the brief time that I have today with you, I'd love to offer you just a perspective on this topic of why might this church decide to declare itself open and affirming. Not just to declare itself open and affirming, because you can't just stop there. You have to go beyond that, obviously. We have to walk the talk, right, and let people know we really mean what we're talking about. So if I can, let me offer you a perspective, but before I do, I'd like to figure out a little bit about the congregation. How many of you know someone who is gay, lesbian, or bisexual? If you'd raise your hands for me. Thank you. Now, if you don't have your hand up, I just want to suggest to you that you probably do know somebody who's gay, lesbian, bisexual, but you just don't know you know them, right? Why do I say that? Well, because social scientists suggest to us that about 10% of the population is homosexual in its orientation, so my guess is that somebody in your grade school was, right? And they just didn't know how to tell you. Or your high school, or your college, or maybe even your church group, or perhaps even your family. Now, why didn't they tell you? Well, the horror of growing up as a gay person in our culture is the horror of having a secret that you don't understand and that you're afraid to share with anybody for fear that they won't love you or respect you anymore. Let me say that again. The horror, and a lot of people don't know this because, you know, we grow up not getting much information about sexuality and certainly not about homosexuality, so we haven't been privy to this. But the horror of growing up as a gay, lesbian, or bisexual person, or a transgendered person, is the horror of having a secret that you don't understand. Children, most of you were aware of your feelings of attraction at about age 11. Do you remember your first crush? No? And most of you, if you came to me as a sex counselor and said, Brian, help me figure out my sexual orientation, I don't really know what those words mean, I'd say, well, what gender were you attracted to? And most of you would say, well, it was the other gender, Brian. In fact, every time I've had a crush on somebody, it was always the other gender. And I'd say, well, that means you're heterosexual, right? Some of you would say, no, I've always had attractions for people of the same gender. I wasn't necessarily comfortable with those feelings, but I've just always felt that. And that means you're homosexual in your orientation. And some of you would say, no, I've actually had feelings for both genders. And that would mean that you are bisexual, whether you ever act on your feelings or not. That's your sexual orientation. Homosexual people grow up in a world in which people don't really understand their sexual orientation. We grow up in a world with thousands of Hallmark cards that talk about heterosexuality and thousands of songs on the radio, right, that celebrate heterosexual love. Thousands of movies that you can go to and sitcoms on television you could watch when I was a child, like Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best and all these shows that we watch were all heterosexual. So if you were a young person who was aware at age 11 that you were attracted to people of the same sex, there wasn't any show on television or any Hallmark card or any song on the radio or generally any discussion at home that helped you understand why you were feeling what you felt. So you felt your feelings in isolation. And you didn't know who to talk to about your feelings. And because you heard awful words out there around you, like sissy, don't throw the ball like a sissy, son, or homo, or queer, or pansy, or fairy, or dyke, right? You've heard those terms before. Well, little children hear these terms, and they start to think, they're talking about me. And I don't know what to do about that, because I don't necessarily want to have these feelings. But where am I going to get information about it? Is there a book in my family library about this? How many of you, when you were growing up, had a book on homosexuality in your family library? I had the dictionary and the World Book Encyclopedia, and they weren't very much help. How many of you had a course in school that explained sexuality to you so that you felt comfortable? And when I say to people, did you get sex education in school, I'm not talking about on the playground, but how many people got it in school where they talked to you about it? 1, 2, 3 maybe? Yeah. So the horror of growing up gay is the horror of having a secret you don't understand because no one's talking about it. And that you know instinctively not to tell anybody about it because you fear if they do, they won't love you anymore. Now, those of you who didn't have your hand up, let me put a face on this issue, because that's what I do. This is the 25th year that I've been doing this work. I started in 1974. I told the group yesterday, the first group I was invited to speak to was a church group, a Bible study group. And the woman greeted me at the door of her home saying, you're very welcome here, but you should know that the lady in the green blazer says she's going to throw up when you walk in the room. The lady in the green blazer was the last one to leave that night. She was so excited about learning new things because we haven't been given access to information, have we? So let me tell you a little bit about me so that those of you who didn't have your hand up might think, hey, maybe I do know somebody who's gay and just don't know I know it. I'm 51 years old. I'm the middle child of 7 Irish Catholics. I'm the product of 16 years of parochial education. It would have been 17 had there been a Catholic kindergarten in Flint, Michigan. There wasn't, so I went to public school for 1 year. When I was in high school, I was elected senior class president by the 200 men in my class. I was also on the basketball team. I was an editor of the yearbook. I was an editor of my university yearbook, and I was in a fraternity. If you had asked my classmates 35 or more years ago, how many of you know someone who is gay? None of them would have raised their hand, would they? No. One might say, well, I think Liberace's gay, but they didn't know Liberace, right? But they elected me class president. Now, why didn't I tell them that I was gay? Because I was terrified of what they would do to me, and you know as well as I do that I never would have been elected class president. Now, I didn't have sex until much later in my life. I'm not talking about what I do, I'm talking about who I am. When I tell you that I'm gay, I'm not telling you what I do, any more than those of you who are heterosexual. If you say I'm heterosexual, I don't have any information about what you do. I just know that that's who you're attracted to, people of the other gender. Okay? Now, of those of you who raised your hand indicating that you know someone who is gay, if it's somebody that you love, could you raise your hand again so that we can see? Somebody that, come out as somebody who loves and cares about somebody who's gay. Thank you. So you're equally impacted by this topic. So here you are as a congregation thinking about, well, why do we go an extra step and go on the line and say we're going to be an open and affirming congregation? Let me tell you a little bit about my work in corporate America, because I think you'll find it instructive. I do trainings all over the country for major corporations. In fact, on Thursday of this week, I spent 4 hours. And incidentally, when I do training, I usually have 8 hours in a corporation. A half a day is 4 hours, and they give me 4 hours to work with people. I was at Lucent on Thursday, and on Friday I was with Hewlett-Packard. And other clients include Ford Motor, Motorola, Lever Brothers, J.P. Morgan. Who would have thought that all of these people would be interested in this issue? Well, why are they interested in this issue? You know why? Because corporations today want their gay, lesbian, and bisexual employees to feel that they are safe, physically and emotionally safe, and that they are valued. Now, my guess is that you want the same thing, that you want people who walk in this building in the morning to feel physically safe and emotionally safe. What would emotionally safe feel like? Well, that people wouldn't be afraid to sit near you. You know, that people would reach out and say hello to you in the morning without worrying about endorsing your lifestyle if they did that. You know, people have that fear. Right? That they would want you to know that you were welcome, and corporations want you to feel valued, and my guess is that you would want people who walk through these doors to feel valued too. And they want you to feel valued because they don't want you to work for another corporation. They don't want you to go down the street because they think that you have some special gifts to offer them. They're not just doing this for gay and lesbian people, they're doing it for African Americans, Native Americans, Asians. They want everyone to feel like if you work for us, you're going to be valued. So how do they make sure people feel valued? Well, they have non-discrimination policies that prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation. They say you may not do anything that discriminates against somebody because they're gay, lesbian, bisexual, or heterosexual, in hiring, promotion, whatever. And in addition to our policies, we're going to have a statement of values. Lucent Technologies, Hewlett-Packard, all the major corporations have policies that say, respect the individual. Some of you know that from your own workplaces? You have these policies that say we're going to respect the individual because they want me to go to work and put all of my energy into the job and not put energy into hiding from you all. Because the studies have shown that if I'm afraid of you, and I come in the morning on Monday and you say to me, so Brian, what'd you do over the weekend? And I'm afraid to say that Ray, my partner of 23 years, and I went to see Matrix, and it's a great film. If I edit Ray's name out of all of my conversations with you over all the years that I'm working with you, and I'm afraid to put Ray's picture on my desk or make a personal phone call that you might overhear, that all the energy that I put into hiding from you is not available for my job. And that's why the corporations create this safe space for folks. In addition to that, they have a code of conduct. You may not use the following words, derogatory language, to describe your employees. And they have resource groups. They encourage gay employees and African American employees to form groups of support because they know that when you're in a group of support, you're going to feel better about yourself and safer. And we're going to give money to those groups because we want you to feel like we support your activities of maybe bringing in a speaker. And the other thing these corporations do is bring in people like me to do training because you know that without information, how are you going to understand this issue? See, my bias is that most heterosexual people do not understand what it is to grow up as a gay person. And why should you? No one's ever told you about it, right? No one's ever told you what it was like to grow up gay. Where did we get our education about homosexuality? We got it from graffiti on bathroom walls, right? We got it from jokes kids told in the playground. We got it from watching a movie and seeing somebody who looked awful. I mean, the way gay people are portrayed in movies has been pretty scary, right? And that's our image. And no one's bothered to talk to us and say that's not true. So how are we supposed to respond comfortably to this issue without some education? So they bring me in to do education, and it has an amazing effect on people. I have had in the last, well, I've been focusing on corporations for the last 10 years. I've had amazing experiences of people coming up to me at the end of training and saying, Brian, I walked into this room very upset. I have to tell you, I was very nervous about coming to your program, and I thought you were going to try to change my values, and you didn't. All you did was tell your story, and I promise you I will never treat a gay person in the same way again. Some people have said to me, Brian, I'm a fundamentalist Christian, and I think that homosexual behavior is morally wrong, but I also think telling an anti-gay joke is morally wrong, and I promise you that I will never tell one again, and I will never let anyone else tell one. Wow. How did that happen? Well, it happened because I put a face on the issue. Human beings are good people, and they want to do the right thing, but normally they don't have access to information that helps them understand what this issue is about. And you know what else these corporations are doing? And I think this is really in line with what you're all thinking about. They have what's called the Safe Space Program. It started at AT&T. It started at AT&T, where executives and people who were working in the factories and associates started putting triangles, magnets up on their work areas. And the magnets were the pink triangle. You know there are two symbols that the gay community uses internationally to identify ourselves. One is the rainbow flag, because we say we are black, brown, red, yellow, white, right? We come from all different backgrounds. We are rich, we are poor, we're Republican, Democrat. We're all over the map, and the rainbow flag celebrates that. That's why I love the song that we sang before I spoke, because it talked about the rainbow. That was great. You know, the other thing I love is you got a butterfly up here. You see the butterfly? Butterfly was the first symbol of gay liberation, because you come out of the closet, right? And after you come out of the closet, you spread your wings. That was pretty cool. But that's not the second symbol. The second symbol is the pink triangle. Pink triangle was used by the Nazis. You know, during World War II, in the ethnic cleansing that took place in occupied territories, the Nazis would send anyone to a concentration camp they thought was a threat to the purity of the race. So 6 million Jews, 500,000 gypsies, several thousand homosexuals, anybody who was thought to be a threat to the purity of the race was sent to concentration camps, and each was given a different symbol. And homosexuals were forced to wear the pink triangle. So it was a symbol of death. But in corporations today, they are putting the pink triangle, which the gay community has embraced as a symbol of solidarity and strength and pride, with a green circle around it. You know, the red circle with the slash means it's not permitted. Well, the green circle is the international symbol for go, and you walk into AT&T buildings and Lucent buildings and Hewlett-Packard buildings and Ford Motor buildings, and you're going to see magnets on people's offices, individuals who are saying, in my office, you are safe. Now, why do they need to put these things up? You know, they've already got policies. They got policies that say, hey, we're not going to discriminate against you. They put them up because gay people don't trust the policies. The overwhelming majority of gay people do not trust that if they came out, something bad wouldn't happen to them at work. Even though the policy says nothing bad will happen to you, the majority are not out of the closet because they think if they do come out, people won't want to work with them. And maybe people won't want to walk into the restroom at the same time as they do. And maybe somebody's going to key their car or break their windshield or write their name in magic marker on the bathroom wall. That's been their experiences. So these heterosexuals are saying, not in my presence they won't. These heterosexuals are saying, if you're walking down the hall and you're wondering whether you're safe, if you see that safe space magnet, you come into my office, because in my office, no one will say anything negative about gay people. And when you listen to the gay people at Ford and Lucent and AT&T and DuPont and Hewlett-Packard, they'll tell you how exciting it is and how important it is for them to see those magnets, because it says, in this person's presence, I am safe. Now, why do we need that special attention? Why does somebody who's gay need that special attention? Because you're talking about, in general, walking wounded people. People who are basically psychologically homeless. Have you ever seen a person who's homeless? Anybody? Yes? Seen somebody who's homeless? They have no place to call home, right? They have no place to rest their head. Well, a psychologist at Cornell University said gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgendered people are psychologically homeless because they grow up in families in which no one knows their secrets, so they never trust that they are safe even in their own home. See? I was a super achiever, and my parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and family members and friends told me all the time that they loved me, but like most gay people I know, I said to myself, would you if you knew? So we never trusted the love that we heard from our parents because we thought, if I tell you that I'm gay, will you still love me? And in fact, when my partner Ray came out, he's the second youngest of 7 boys. He was studying to be a priest at Indiana University, he was studying to be a priest at Notre Dame University in Indiana. He went home to tell his mom and dad that he was gay. On the first day of a 2-week vacation, they disowned him. They've since reconciled. They reconciled before his father died last year, but what disowning said to him was, you're right. When you thought to yourself, we will love you only if you're heterosexual, you were right. We will be proud of you only if you are heterosexual, you were right. Okay. So you don't feel safe in your family, and you don't feel safe in your schools because you're terrified if the subject comes up, people are going to look at you and say you don't belong here anymore. Get out of the locker room, or get off the team, or get off the student council, or get out of the counseling office. My high school guidance counselor said to our class, I was in the honors class, this is a man with his master's in guidance and counseling. He said to us, if any of you guys come into my office to tell me that you have screwed a chick, was his terminology, I'll talk to you. If you tell me you're queer, I will kick you out of my office. A few months later, he joined the faculty and voting me the highest honor the school had to offer. I was given the John Stewart Christian Leadership Award. And when they gave me the award, I said to myself, they'll never give you this. They would never give you this if they knew your secret. 8 years later, I came out publicly and they took the award away from me. And that's what people fear most is, I have no place to call my own. I have no place where I feel safe, not in my family, not in my church, not in the guidance office, not in my fraternity or sorority, right? Because I'm so afraid that if you find out who I am, you won't like me anymore. How is the experience of a gay person different than the experience of, say, an African American person, or a Native American person, or a Latino? Well, if you will, for a moment, just with me, imagine that all of us were born at the same time. Okay? We're all the same age. Okay? For some of you, that's great. You know, so let's say we're all born the same time, and we're all in the hospital at the same time. You have the picture, and we're all side by side in the hospital unit. The babies, all these babies. Do you know? And we don't remember this unless we dig down deep. But for the briefest moment, there was a period of time in our life in which we thought, this is great. White babies and black babies and red babies and yellow babies had no sense of difference between each other. We didn't know what rich meant. Do you remember that? Probably not. It was so long ago. We didn't know what rich meant. We didn't know what poor meant. We didn't know what female and male meant. We didn't know that any of us were going to be valued differently by the culture. Here we were all together crying they fed us. It was great. It was great. There was no bias, was there? And then what happens? Well, our parents come and pick us up. These are good people. Our parents are good people. Everybody does the best they can. But they pick us up and they take us home to their values, and they share with us what they think about any number of things, including the other babies that were in that unit with us. Now, what separates my experience from the experience of other people is that the Latino baby, unless it was adopted, was picked up by Latino hands. And the Jewish baby was picked up by Jewish hands, and the black baby by black hands. I was picked up by heterosexual hands who thought they were bringing home a heterosexual baby, but they weren't. They were bringing home a gay baby. Now, some of you are saying, oh, Brian, stop. It's not a gay baby. Social scientists say it is. Though I didn't have any feelings or action, social scientists are telling us today that we come into the world predisposed, hardwired. That despite what we feel in terms of shame or joy about our feelings, we are nevertheless going to have the feelings, and you cannot pray the feelings away. I tried. So I'm brought into this family that celebrates heterosexuality, and I sure wanted to celebrate it too. I could join the family in its other celebrations of values. I was Irish. I was great Irish. See, I knew all the songs. I was good. And Catholic, I took to it like a duck to water. right? I was the holiest kid. If my folks were alive today, they would say Brian was the holiest kid in Michigan. Say, Brian was the one who used to tie a towel around his neck and pass out Necco wafers to his brothers and sisters during home masses. See, I had two secrets growing up. One was that I always had these feelings of same-sex attraction, and the other was that I always wanted to be a saint, which is something you don't tell folks, right? And that's what my life was about, was wanting to be a saint. But here I am in a family, you know, and they loved the saint part, but they couldn't hear about the homosexual feelings part. And so do you remember being a kid and having your brothers and sisters tease you, oh, Brian and Colette sitting in a tree, K-I-S-S-I, you remember that? And those of you who are heterosexual pretended you were offended by it, but you sort of liked the attention. Gay and lesbian kids sort of hope for the attention because maybe, it's true, maybe one day I could have these feelings. A talk show host asked me one time, and apologies to those who heard me say this yesterday, but a talk show host asked me one time, if I could give you a pill that would turn you heterosexual, would you take it? I said, not today. I've worked too hard. You know, I've been in therapy for years. I drank a bottle of turpentine when I was 26 because I was so afraid of being gay. I said, I'm past all that. I've found a place in the world for me. I finally understood that God loves me just the way I am, right? And that my calling in life is to bloom and grow to my full potential. But if you had offered me that pill when I was 10 or 11 or 12 or 16 or 21, I would have taken the pill because I didn't want to feel what I'm feeling, see? Psychologically homeless. I have a letter that I want to share, and I know we have limited time, but I want to share this letter with you because I want to put the face on the issue. I get a lot of mail from people. And I get mail from people who are psychologically homeless, who have no place to turn but to the author of a book they may have read. And when you are yourself thinking about whether or not you want to declare yourself as an open and affirming congregation, don't think about me. I'm too far out. I'm in the desert. Some of you may have watched during the singing. I can't sing. No, I love to sing, but I can't sing in a church. I start to cry. It hurts too much. I have to put on armor when I do, you must know this, 25 years you would think, gosh, it should be easy for you. But each time I do a presentation, I put on armor in the morning to protect myself. Now, when I go into a corporate environment, I put on armor to protect myself from the people out there who might say really hurtful things, so I'm prepared not to take it personally. When I come into a church, I put on armor to protect myself from the potential to let it down and trust that I might be embraced and then get hurt again. You all seen that cartoon with Lucy and Charlie Brown where she holds the football and promises she won't pull it back, and Charlie comes charging towards it, and every time he goes to kick it, Lucy pulls it up? There are some of us who can't go for the football anymore. It's too painful. But there are people out there like the young person who I'm going to share a letter from, who need us and need our churches to decide that for you, we are not going to make the same mistake we made with Brian. We're going to let you know at an early age that we are there for you. He says, Dear Brian, I am 16 years old, a sophomore in high school. I know that you're a very busy man. I'll try not to take up too much of your time. For the past 3 years, I've been trying to find a way to tell my family and friends that I am a homosexual. Now, he's 16. But I'm afraid to, you're the only person other than my friend who is my sex partner at 16. That I have had the nerve to tell. When I first started having sex with my best friend 3 years ago, so 13 years old, he's having sex. Do his parents know this? Right? And is anyone talking to him about this? Because it's a secret that he's afraid to share, and parents are afraid to have him know about sexuality, not because they're bad, but just because they think you're too young, right? Is he getting any guidance on this? He said, I thought it would only last until I had sex with a girl, but I was wrong. I had 2 sex experiences with girls, but all I could think about was having sex with another boy. He said, some people may say I'm just too confused to understand, but I know that I am, as you say in your book on being gay, a constitutional homosexual, and I'm proud of that. The problem is that I want everyone else to know, but I've seen how the people at my school are treated, and they're just being suspected of being gay. How can I tell anyone how I feel? So who's he supposed to talk to? Another problem is that I face is the only person that I have had a relationship with no longer lives here. Here is Roswell, New Mexico. He said, how am I supposed to find another person to love if no one knows I'm gay? Most of the time I feel so lonely that I want to die. About a month ago, I felt so bad that I went into the bathroom and I took 32 aspirins, 46 sinus tablets, 16 nasal decongestants, 8 amoxicillin tablets. But as you can see, it didn't work. When I went back to my room, all I could see was my mother crying at my funeral. So crying and scared, I went and I made myself vomit. I was sick for the rest of the week, but no one figured out why. Still, Brian, every night of the week, I look at the .357 pistol in my father's dresser and think how easy it would be. See, now my bias is that I'm not supposed to be getting this letter, right? I live thousands of miles away from this 16-year-old. His mom needs to know about this. His dad needs to know about this. His pastor needs to know about this. His coach. Somebody needs to know that there's a young person at home thinking about killing himself in a second attempt. Somebody needs to take the gun out of the house. Somebody needs to tell this young man, we love you just the way you are. But he doesn't know that. I don't want to die. I just want to know that I will be loved and cared for, and God knows when that will be. I keep trying, holding on, thinking maybe this day. You know what? The sad thing about this is that when I think about responding to someone like this, I'm not sure where to send them, where I trust that they're going to be safe. I know that if they were old enough, I could send them to Lucent Technologies. But I don't know if I can send them to a church. Because I don't know whether they're going to feel safe in the church. Because I don't know what the churches are saying about this issue. I'm nervous about even writing a letter that the mother may find in the room. And if the mother finds the letter in the room and decides to kick the child out of the house, 50% of the children who are on the street today as runaways are there because they're gay, according to people who work with runaways. The Bush administration told us that 30% of all completed teenage suicides are by kids who are gay. Gay kids are killing themselves 3 times more often than heterosexual kids are. Why? Because they have a secret that they don't understand and that they're afraid to tell anyone for fear that they won't be loved anymore. So where does that bring us here? The title of my talk, and I need to do this quickly, was, and Neil called and he said, okay, Brian, what's the title of your talk? I looked up at my office wall and there was a framed cover of a magazine that I edited over 20 years ago, and the title was, Gay People in the Church, Is There a Place? This is not a new question. So I said, let's try Gay People in the Church, Is There a Place? I thought of a better title for you. WWJD. I didn't know what that meant. I was in a licensing office. I was getting a driver's license in Florida, and this woman had it on her computer screen, WWJD. I thought, what is that? Oh, what is it? What would Jesus do? And then I got teary, see. The reporter who did the story on my coming to your church asked me yesterday or the day before when he was doing the story, are you a Christian? Now, for some of you, that may be an easy question to answer. For those of us who feel so battered by people out there who proclaim to be Christian, we are so afraid of using the word to describe ourselves because we're afraid of stepping into a circle and having people think that we feel and act like those people. So I said, I'm a follower of Jesus. Now, for me, that's different than being a follower of Paul or a follower of Moses. I'm a follower of Jesus, and the question that I ask myself always now is, what would Jesus do? If Jesus got this letter from Ched, if Jesus was one of your congregants, and Jesus was asked, are we going to make this an open and affirming congregation for people like Ched? Are we going to go out of our way to tell them you are welcome here? WWJD. Thank you very much for inviting me. Beyond being thrilled to be invited into a church to tell the story, I will not forget the experience of being with you today. I'm sorry that I can't stay. I've been in Denver since Wednesday, but I will forever remember the experience of talking to this congregation in this church at this time in my life. Thank you very much.